All right, I believe the team's here. Everyone's here. Well, good morning. My name is Knock Flynn. I'm the senior judge for this session, and my responsibility is to kind of help facilitate the presentation, going through the agenda, as well as any housekeeping items. So, looking forward to hearing all about your presentation. So this is scheduled for about 45 minutes, and we'll spend about 15 minutes with intro and opening comments, and then we'll jump into your presentation, which is about 25 minutes, and I will keep track of that, and then we'll spend the last 20 minutes for Q&A and some feedback. Does that sound good with everyone?
Yep, sounds great.
Great, great. Okay, so I'm going to open with first inviting all the judges and team members to introduce yourself. Remember, this is a blind competition, so please don't announce any affiliations of your school, university, to make sure that we have a fair and good judgment. Sounds good? All right.
Sounds good.
How about, I'll kick you off, Ryan, and then you just call on the next person who hasn't gone. Does that work?
Ryan Malmeister.
I'm Sean O'Gorman.
I'm Peyton Felix.
I'm John Werber.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Megan Barbier. I'm really excited to spend some time with you today. I'm a human resources executive based in California. I spend my time with high growth tech startups, currently advising, investing, and consulting. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Thank you so much, Megan. How about Ed?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Cornejo. I am a recently retired management consultant leader. Having spent almost 20 years with one of the big four, my particular area of emphasis was enterprise risk management, governance, and compliance.
Wonderful. And how about you, Cynthia?
Hi, greetings from Chicago, where it's actually going to snow this afternoon. I am glad to be with you. This is my third year as a judge. I'm very excited to hear your presentations. I am a CPA by training who now is in strategic communications, project management, and enterprise growth arenas, having worked at the Big Four, having worked in law firms, and as well as executive search firms. So I'm a B2B specialist.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cynthia. And I'm Knock Flynn. I am a corporate controller at a construction company that focuses on the sustainability around the built environment. This will be my 5th year judging, so every year it is a fantastic time. So we are all looking forward to learning from you. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. So make sure that you wear that role-playing hat on. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are to begin with. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes musters on all 3 counts. During this time, your teams will not be interrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside of the role-playing.
Hello, we are Powerplay Consulting from Potsdam, New York. I'm Peyton Felix, the business analysis.
My name's Sean O'Gorman. I'm the legal consultant.
I'm John Werber. I'm the ethical consultant.
And I am Ryan Malmeister, the financial analyst.
So just a quick overview of the presentation today. We're going to give a quick background history of the Uber along with the current state of the company. And then we're going to go over a quick brief synopsis of what we're going to present to you. And then that's going to lead us into the business and financial issues. Then we'll have a quick midpoint. And then we'll go to the legal and the ethical issues, followed up by the recommendation, and then end it all off with the conclusion.
So before we get into any legal, financial, or ethical issues, I want to take a moment to introduce the company we're focusing on today, which is Uber, and walk through how it got to where it is today and where we believe it should go. Uber was founded in 2009 by Garrett Camp and Travis Kalanick. This idea came from a simple frustration of trying to get a cab. That experience sparked a question. What if you can just tap a button on your phone and get a ride? The company launched in San Francisco as Uber Cab, starting with luxury black cars. But things really took off in 2012 when Uber introduced UberX, which allowed regular people to use their own cars as their own vehicles, which made the services much more affordable and accessible. That move is what truly launched Uber into the global scale. Today, Uber operates in over 70 countries with nearly 7.8 million drivers on its platform. In 2024 alone, Uber completed more than 11 billion trips. Financially, the company is doing amazing. Uber reported $44 billion in revenue last year and under $10 billion in net income. But here's the issue where we have. Despite that success, Uber still classifies all of its drivers as independent contractors. That means no health insurance, no paid time off, and no retirement contributions, even for people working more than 40 hours a week. That doesn't sound too good. So what's the solution? We believe Uber has a real opportunity here to lead, not in just transportation, but in how gig workers are treated. That is why our team is recommending a two-path employment model, that drivers would be either given a choice, either stay full-time employees or become part-time. This model allows Uber to stay flexible and efficient, while finally offering drivers the stability they deserve. It also helps Uber avoid major legal costs and keeps the business financially sustainable. So that's a quick look at Uber's past, its present challenges, and future. And we believe that makes the most sense, one that's more fair, responsible, and forward-thinking. Now I'll be passing it to Sean for the synopsis.
Yeah, so as a firm, we've examined how Uber's current labor model raises legal concerns and presents financial risk, and most importantly, exposes a major ethical dilemma. As Ryan just said, the conflict of Uber's stating its drivers as independent contractors. In Uber's values, they state that they are about fairness, innovation, and opportunity. So as Ryan said, this means that none of their drivers have basic protections like health insurance, paid leave, or minimum wage guarantees. These gaps in the support create a financial instability for the very people who make Uber's service possible. The ethical question is clear. Can Uber continue to benefit from this model without offering drivers a more secure and equitable path? We believe it's time to evolve, not by abandoning flexibility, but by introducing fairness. And that's why, as Ryan said, we're proposing a two-path employment model that gives drivers a real choice.
Let's talk about Uber's business model. Uber's business model is built around a platform that offers exceptional flexibility and real-time matching, which has been a key driver of its success. The company's ability to connect riders and drivers instantly based on demand and availability ensures an efficient and a seamless experience for both parties. Drivers have the freedom to log on to the app and start working at any time, allowing them to choose their own schedules and balance their work with other commitments. This flexibility is particularly appealing for those who use Uber as a secondary source of income or as a flexible way to earn money on their own terms. Additionally, Uber's advanced technology ensures that supply and demand are constantly balanced in real time. This means that when demand surges, such as during rush hours or bad weather conditions, more drivers are quickly routed to high demand areas. And when demand slows down, drivers can choose to log off without being punished. This flexible responsiveness not only helps drivers maximize their own earnings, but also guarantees that riders can access a ride where they need it, reducing wait times and ensuring customer satisfaction. The real-time matching system allows Uber to scale efficiently, meeting the needs of millions of riders and drivers around the world, while optimizing the overall experience for both users. This combination of flexibility and real-time improvements is one of the core reasons why Uber has been able to disrupt the traditional taxi industry and become a leader in the on-demand transportation space. Next slide. However, if Uber were forced to classify its drivers as employees instead of independent contractors, it would have to make some major changes. One of the biggest changes would be implementing structured shifts. This means drivers would need to work at specific times rather than being able to choose when they drive. Uber would also have to predict demand in a much more rigid way, which could lead to staffing issues. For example, there may be too many drivers available during slow periods, while there may be too few drivers during busy times. These issues could result in inefficiency that hurt Uber's ability to service customers. In addition to operational problems, reclassifying drivers would also increase costs for Uber. The company would need to invest more in payroll, administration, and scheduling software, and ensuring that it meets all human resources and compliance requirements. These are costs Uber doesn't currently have to deal with when drivers are independent contractors, but would become necessary if drivers were employees. Next slide. Another major challenge for Uber is its surge pricing model. Surge pricing allows Uber to raise prices during times of high demand, which helps balance the number of riders and drivers. If Uber classifies drivers as employees, surge pricing could face restrictions or be less flexible, which would limit Uber's ability to adjust pricing in response to changing demand. This could make it harder for Uber to compete and maintain profitability, as surge pricing is one of its most effective tools. The biggest issue, though, would be competition. If Uber reclassifies drivers but its competitors like Lyft, DoorDash, and others do not, Uber would suddenly be at a big disadvantage. These other companies would still have lower costs and greater flexibility. While Uber would be dealing with higher expenses and less flexibility, this could result in Uber losing customers and drivers to its competitors who continue operating under the gig economy model. That's why we believe the most ethical, realistic solution is a two-path employment model. Instead of forcing all drivers into one category, Uber can offer them a choice between staying as an independent contractor with full flexibility and control over your schedule, but no benefits, or choose full-time employment with benefits, job protections, and a guaranteed wage. This gives drivers control over how they want to work. Some drivers may prefer to stay independent because they only work part-time or use Uber for extra income. Others who rely on Uber as their main source of income may want the security that comes with full-time employment. This model respects both groups. It also directly addresses the ethical concerns we've raised. It gives drivers self-determination, which is a key ethical principle. It shows respect for their diverse needs, and is transparent because drivers would know exactly what to expect in each option. From Uber's perspective, this solution is also practical. It helps to reduce legal risks by showing that the company is adapting to changing labor standards. It can improve driver satisfaction and retention. It positions Uber as a leader, not just in technology, but in ethical business practices. This isn't about sacrificing innovation. It's about proving that a tech-forward company can also lead with fairness, flexibility, and responsibility. Now I'll be passing over to Ryan.
So I will be talking about the financial impact this two-path model will have. So in 2024, Uber earned $44 billion in revenue, which is up 18% from the previous year. They reported almost about $10 billion in profit, which is an enormous jump driven by tax benefits and investment gains. They also completed over 11 billion trips and served 171 million monthly users, which just shows how many people actually use this platform. And behind all of this success are nearly 8 million drivers and carriers who keep the system going. These workers are the reason Uber has become a global powerhouse. So here's the problem beneath the numbers. This is where things start to shift. Uber's financial model works because those drivers are classified as independent contractors and not employees. That means Uber avoids the cost of providing things like health insurance, paid sick leave, and unemployment coverage. On the other hand, Uber's corporate employees receive full benefit packages, including healthcare, 401k, sabbaticals every 5 years. which is still pretty crazy. So while Uber is clearly willing and able to support traditional employees, the drivers who power the core service, the ones who take on most day-to-day risks, are excluded. And that's just not ethical. It's a financial liability. So here's the risk of doing nothing about it. If labor laws change or courts force reclassification, Uber could suddenly face a 20 to 30% increase in labor costs. That includes benefits, taxes, overtime pay, compliance infrastructure, and that's just direct cost. Uber might also have to raise fares, which risks losing sensitive customers or price sensitive customers. Or they might shrink their service zones, which could lower revenue and open the door for competitors. So, how the two-path model helps Uber financially. That's where a recommendation of the two-path model employment offers a smart way forward. This approach lets Uber maintain what works, flexibility and scalability. Drivers who prefer to stay independent can do that. But those who want to drive full-time and want security, Uber would offer employment with benefits, wage protection, and long-term support. Financially, this model is more sustainable than full reclassification. Uber controls the cost because benefits only go to those who opt in. It also builds trust with the drivers, reduces turnover, and lowers legal risk. It also helps company avoid class action lawsuits, payback settlements, and negative press added to investors. So Uber's current model is profitable, but it's built on a system that is increasingly under pressure. The two-path model is smart, proactive, and protects Uber's future without sacrificing the flexibility that makes Uber super successful. Up next, we'll explore how the model also strengthens Uber's legal and ethical strategies and how the company stays competitive in a rapidly evolving industry. Next slide.
So far, we have covered the financial and business issues. Always good to have a quick midpoint, especially in a long 25-minute presentation. We thought so as a team. And up next, I will be discussing the legal issues, and then wrapping it up, John will talk about the ethical issues. So leading into the legal issues, Uber's entire business model relies on classifying its drivers as independent contractors rather than employees. This approach allows the company to avoid costs associated with minimum wage laws, overtime pay, health benefits, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp. However, this model is facing severe legal scrutiny in courts, not just in the United States, but worldwide. So some of the legal challenges facing the U.S. at the federal level. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, businesses that classify workers as employees must provide minimum wage, overtime pay, and other benefits. With Uber's current contractor model, they do not provide any of these protections, which has led to many lawsuits arguing that drivers should be considered employees under the federal law. If Uber is forced to reclassify drivers as employees, the company would need to pay higher wages, provide more benefits, and comply with labor laws, drastically increasing costs, as Ryan talked about. At the state level, several states have introduced stricter labor laws, making it more difficult for companies like Uber to classify workers as independent contractors. The most well-known example is California's Assembly Bill 5, AB-5, which introduced the ABC test, a stricter standard for determining employees versus contractor status. Under this test, a worker is considered an employee by default unless the company can prove the worker is free from company control, the work performed outside company's usual business, and the worker has an independent business providing similar services. Uber and other gig companies failed this test, which would have forced them to reclassify drivers as employees. Instead, Uber responded with Proposition 22, which exempted them from the AB-5 law while providing limited benefits to the drivers. However, this proposition is now under more legal challenge, and if it is overturned, then Uber will be forced to comply with the stricter labor laws in California. If other states adopt similar laws, Uber's contractor model could become legally unviable across the United States. So basically, right now in California, instead of Uber just complying with the regulations set, they came up with their own proposition so that they could avoid that. And moving on to the global trends. Uber is not just facing issues here in the US. There's a global movement towards stronger labor practices for gig workers. So the international legal pressure, many European countries have ruled that Uber drivers must be classified as employees. Spain and France, for example, require Uber to provide higher wages, social security benefits, and paid leave. The Netherlands and Italy have issued rulings forcing Uber to comply with employee protections under the labor laws. Some key legal cases is Uber versus Islam in the UK Supreme Court back in 2021. This court ruled that Uber drivers in the UK are workers rather than independent contractors. This entitles them to minimum wage, paid leave, and other benefits associated with being an employee. This decision forced Uber to adjust its business model in the UK, which increased their costs and compliance burdens. This trend is clear. Courts worldwide are rejecting Uber's contractor model. And if Uber continues to not proactively adjust, it will continue to face lawsuits, regulatory fines, and operational restrictions in multiple markets. So moving forward, I think there's a strategic path moving forward. They must act before being forced to by courts or lawmakers. The best approach is the two-path strategy that we have all said that balances business flexibility with worker protections. And by taking these preemptive actions, Uber can ensure legal stability across all markets, not just in the United States, but worldwide, improve its reputation with workers and regulators. As we all know, social media is growing every single day, and there's a lot of negativity towards Uber right now. And also, it can protect its long-term profitability and shareholder value. As Ryan said, by switching to the two-path model, this will lead to a short-term loss, but we believe it's a long-term gain. And this approach allows Uber to adapt to the changing legal landscape rather than being forced into costly compliance measures after losing lawsuits. And now I'll pass it to Werber. John.
Let's talk more directly about why the current model raises ethical concerns. Right now, many Uber drivers are working full-time hours, but because they're classified as independent contractors, they aren't guaranteed a living wage. Their income depends on demand, which fluctuates daily. They don't get paid time off, they don't have health coverage through the company, and they don't have protection against being removed from the platform with little or no explanation. These are serious issues that affect people's lives as they raise important ethical questions about fairness, dignity, and responsibility. From a moral perspective, companies have a responsibility to treat people with respect, not just when it's convenient, but because it's the right thing to do. That includes providing stability, protection, and fair compensation to the people who make your business possible. From a utilitarian view, which is about creating the greatest good for the greatest number, Uber's current model doesn't work either. While it benefits companies and shareholders, it causes harm to a large group of workers who rely on Uber to survive, which is not an example of ethical balance. We believe our solution, the two-path model, respects both ethics and practicality. It gives drivers the choice to choose what works best for them, providing security for those who want full-time employment while protecting flexibility for those who prefer independence. I'm not saying Uber has done something illegal, but legality and ethics aren't always the same. The question is the company living up to the values they promote? Is it doing what's fair and just for the people who rely on it? It's not a perfect solution, but the two-path model is a real step forward and one that aligns with Uber's values of innovation, opportunity, and responsibility. If Uber wants to be a leader of innovation that's in this specific market, innovation shouldn't just be about technology. It should also be about creating better systems for the people who keep the company running every day. Drivers aren't just a part of the platform, they are the platform. Their labor is what allows Uber to function, grow, and profit. So why shouldn't they be treated with the same care and investment that Uber gives to its algorithms or executive teams? Offering a two-path model isn't about punishing innovation. It's about redefining what responsible innovation looks like. It's about proving that a modern company can be both flexible and fair. And let's be clear, when the drivers are secure, valued, and supported, everyone benefits. The company, the riders, and the community that they serve. Ethical leadership means stepping up when it's uncomfortable, not just when it's easy. This is Uber's chance to do just that, to lead with its values and show the world what a truly modern, ethical business can look like. Now, I'll pass it over to Sean for the conclusion.
Sorry, I'm muted. So in conclusion, Uber has undeniably transformed the transportation industry, offering convenience and affordability to millions and millions of users. However, this innovation has come with significant ethical concerns. The labor rights issues. One of the most controversial aspects of Uber's business model is its treatment of drivers. Uber classifies drivers, as we've said multiple times, independent contractors rather than employees, which means they do not receive any minimum wage guarantees, health benefits, or job security. Many drivers report that their earnings barely cover expenses, and the lack of benefits like healthcare and retirement plans make it difficult for them to sustain long-term employment and long-term financial stability. And despite legal battles in multiple countries, Uber continues to resist reclassifying drivers as employees. This ongoing conflict between corporate profitability and fair labor practices remains a major ethical concern. So moving forward is a two-path model to ethical responsibility. While Uber has revolutionized the transportation industry, its long-term success depends on how it addresses these ethical concerns. To build a more ethical and sustainable future, Uber must implement fair labor practices, ensuring drivers receive livable wages and benefits if they so want to, and that's where the choice comes. And to strengthen their data privacy protections, ensuring transparency and accountability. Only through genuine reform and corporate responsibility can Uber maintain this public trust, protect its reputation, and secure long-term success. And thank you. That's all we have for you today.
Thank you so much, team. Appreciate it. Can you help me understand a little bit better on why you feel that some of the concerns you've raised are ethical issues and not simply business concerns?
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that. I think it's an ethical problem that you have the drivers running the company. They are the company, and they do not protect them like they protect their employees that are maybe administration employees. So I think that comes down to an ethical issue.
I also believe that, again, business or legal problems don't really care about the treatment of like human beings. So it's ethical to me because the question of doing the two-path model like involves fairness, responsibility, and treatment of human beings because it's unequal treatment of their workers. It's basically exploiting the vulnerability of the actual worker, the everyday worker who shows up and is making the money for the company but doesn't get any no one actually like sees them in work, and the lack of voice or power within the company from driver to corporate.
I'm not sure if anybody else experienced. I did lose Ryan for about 10,
Oh,
15
sorry.
seconds of what you just said. So
Sorry.
you might have to just repeat the last 15
Yeah,
seconds
the
to
last
make
Oh,
sure.
the last
Yeah.
15 sec. Oh, sorry. The last 15 seconds. So basically, I'm saying just in general, like the actual Uber driver doesn't have a very big voice within the company. He's just one small part to corporate. But meanwhile, all these drivers are actually the people, the worker itself are making them the money and making them available to grow and prosper. So again, it's just a lack of voice within the company. So I think that makes it more ethical than more of like just a business problem.
Thank you, Ryan. And you also mentioned fairness in your response. So as a follow-up question is, I'm very concerned about the financial metrics and the performance of the company. Why should I be concerned about Uber caring about ethical concerns? Why is it their responsibility to care?
I believe it's their responsibility to care because they want their company to be the powerhouse, like basically the monopoly of transportation. Because back in, I guess, more than 20 years ago, you didn't have this. So you would have to call a cab, a ride service, and pay a certain amount of money. But now, if you want to go down the block or to your friend's house or to the bar, per se, or even to the airport, you could have these set and ready to go. And it will probably be it would be cheaper for a regular working human being to use Uber than call a black cab or a limousine to go to the airport again, or even to your friend's house or to somewhere you had too much to drink. There needs to be a medium in between luxury car services and just your everyday. I need to get there, and I'm willing to pay a price at any time and to get where you need to be going. So I feel like it's a little bit different where, again, the bottom line is basically you want people to be treated how you want to be treated and you want them to have rights. And whether a company's success comes from the expenses of their employees, like I think Uber would rather want to succeed doing the right thing than rather just take and take until someone would rather use Lyft or another cheaper option, because everyone's always looking for a cheaper option, but sometimes you'd rather quality over quantity. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have questions from the panel?
I have one, if I may. I would love to double click on the financial aspect of the recommendation. So, as a board member, I don't know if you want to go back to the slide or happy to speak to it. Is the proposal that where is this offset coming from? I think by your counts you were estimating it's a 20 to 30% increase on overhead associated with converting. I didn't see any modeling, so let's make some assumptions. Let's say half of people opt to convert. Are we using revenue to offset this? Or, I know we covered it a little bit on what the downside impact of this proposed change could be, but how is the team thinking about this? Where is this going to be funded from if we went the route to allow people to opt into employment status?
That is a great question. I believe they'd go into their revenue, if anything. If they're going to be making all this money, and again, it seems to me, as I've been looking at Uber, they've been making money pretty much every year going up. So this year was up 18%, but they've been climbing up in their revenue aspect, making, like, again, $10 million in profit this year alone. But I think they'll dip into that part, and then hopefully maybe they will even, give a certain amount of full-time employee jobs. So, just like how every place, there's only so many people that can work in a company, that they are, again, have the opportunity to either become full-time and gain all those benefits, but actually do that 5 to 7 days a week if they want to, but also give the opportunity to, again, give the choice to the driver to be either like, do I want to be an Uber driver, or do I just want to do this to make a couple bucks on the weekend when I'm doing nothing, or again, I'm just trying to make a few extra dollars to make ends meet. So I believe that I truly think that they should take it from, again, their revenue, because I feel like they are in a monopoly of, other than, because there was a stat that they were 77% people use Uber over Lyft, and not even including any other ride services like cabs or, again, black cars and like Cadillac services. But yeah, I think from the 8 million drivers that they have, I believe people do enjoy having the choice of logging in and logging out and being the driver and choosing when they can start and go. So yeah, I believe that they will. I truly think that they should use, again, their revenue and some of their profits to maybe take a hit for the next, maybe per se, year or two. But I think them doing that will make them more money in long term and create, again, a sustainable company that will be here for our entire lifetime, and hopeful that it will grow into something even more than that.
So if I could just repeat back, the understanding would be, as a public company, to go to shareholders to say, we are intentionally taking a hit on revenue based on the ethical and the long-term sustainability of the business argument. That would be the explanation to shareholders on having it hit revenue.
Yes, I believe that will be fine, because again, most investors are willing to take the risk, but in my opinion, I believe that this risk will be greater long term than it will be staying as it is now.
To add something, thank you for that presentation. My question is, I would believe that Uber are aware of the need for them to be much more ethical in their business, as you are presented, in the concerns of health and taking care of the people who are generating for them the income. But my question is, why do you think they are not doing it? That's one question. And question two is, if why they are not doing it is because they are careful about continuing becoming the low-cost service provider, would they becoming also providers of full-time employment enable them to sustain that low-cost service provider model? And if not, number three, have you thought of any innovations that can be brought in such that even though they may adopt the model of full-time employment, by use of those innovations, they will still be able to cut down their costs so that at the end of the day, they maintain their position? Because I know that's the position they are trying to defend. Thank you.
Yes, great question. We believe that they have not done this yet because it is actually the complete opposite of what their business model currently is. Right now, they let their drivers have the full choice on when they want to work and whatnot. So I think that changing that, anytime a business changes its model, they're going to see a huge loss right up front. And that's what we were kind of talking about with the financial side, is that it's going to be a short-term hit. They will lose quite a bit of money when they first switch over to this, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road, when they have more brand loyalty and the perception of Uber as a whole company is better, I think it will go back up and be better than what it currently is. So I think that's why they have not done it yet, because it is the complete opposite of what their business model is right now. And that is a huge risk, changing your business model. And what I couldn't really hear you, Jeffrey, on the third question that you had.
Well, the third question is, now that you can identify that why they don't want to change, perhaps is because they want to maintain their business model of being the low-cost provider. And if you were to therefore provide a win-win situation where the employees win and also Uber wins, Have you thought of any innovations that can be proposed that can manage to accommodate the full-time employment as a model and yet make them maintain the same status of local service provider?
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I thought you guys provided a lot of information, which is great. You obviously did your homework, financial information, regulatory information. I have a suggestion and then a question. The suggestion is that it would have been helpful to see, for instance, on maybe 1 or 2 slides, a couple columns, current state, proposed state, and then just list the pros and cons. But I mean, that's just from a visual perspective. You guys walk through all the information orally, so that's fine too. It's just another approach. And then my question is on the 2-path model, right? So you would have employees that pick a full-time employment route, and then the other drivers choose to stay in the current model. So my question is, for those drivers that choose to stay on the current model, would Uber then be shielded from all of the regulatory risks that they're currently facing just because the employee made that choice? Or I mean, I know it's a legal question, so probably can't answer that completely, but what was some of the thinking behind that?
So yeah, I have no knowledge about the legality of that, but my thinking behind it is that if they have the choice to choose between full-time employee or stay as an independent contractor, right? Because some people drive Uber as a full-time job and they use it to support themselves or their families. And other people just do it. College kids do it just to make money for the weekend or whatnot. So I think when you give them that choice to flip full-time or to stay, I believe that there would be no legal scrutiny against that, because you did give them the choice. And hey, Ed, do you need to do this to provide for your family? Is this a living wage for you? Or is this, hey, I'm doing this to make the extra $40 a week so I can go out and do whatever on the weekends or whatnot? So I believe that there would be no legal issues when implementing the 2-path model.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Cynthia?
Thank you, Powerplay team. We're glad you're on this project. I want to inquire about the impact of the Uber model and AI on how you would view route allocations or order allocations being distributed between full-time and contracting gig staff. Do you feel that you have a view on how that would propel success of your 2-path model or put up new barriers for implementation?
Yeah, thinking
So
about.
let me just say, the example being that Uber would be inclined to give most routes to the full-time team over
Right.
the contractors, or not. So
Right. So I think yes, that does bring up another barrier in what we are proposing that they do. But I think that if you know the exact number of full-time drivers that you have within your city, you have X amount of full-time drivers working tonight in San Francisco. Okay, now we can allocate these gig workers, the independent contractors. Now, hey, we don't need 50 drivers, we only need 12. So then we won't send. So yeah, we will send most of the rides to the full-time employees. So yeah, Ryan, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, because Uber runs on, so you either can schedule a ride predetermined, or again, Uber is based off needing the ride that second. So I feel like again, Uber has the opportunity to either allow people to either schedule their rides and allow those full-time employees to be that cab service, that the yellow cab, like just waiting, like you need to go from down the block or wherever. But this will make it like more permanent for them, and I don't think it has like truly any barriers that would make Uber less again, like not like a very well well run company, but I think it allows people like to not have people just wait and sit in their cars and not run gas and just wait for someone to call on them to get picked up, and just allow them to have like that stability and almost allow flexibility too, to be able to run successfully and I don't know, just grow in general, because I feel Uber is the monopoly of what used to be the cab service, what used to be again the black car service, and this is the new step forward. So I believe that they have the opportunity to again become the new yellow cab all around. But instead of it being the same person, it will be again, it could be a neighbor, it could be anybody. So that's all I got.
Cynthia, oh, you had your hand, you put your hand down. Megan, did you have a question as a follow-up to that?
I did, but I did see Jeffrey's hand first. So
okay, got it.
It is in line with this one, but yeah, I can wait my turn after that one.
Okay, sounds good. Jeffrey, what would you like to follow up on?
Yeah, I just wanted to indicate that, you see, when it comes to an ethical question, most of the time it poses a moral dilemma. And in a dilemma, you want really to make sure that you balance the expectations and benefits. And here, Uber is also an equal important partner. So we should not just focus on the drivers alone and look at the plight of the drivers without asking what happens about Uber, because if it does not work for them, then definitely they'll keep resisting. And so my expectation from this team was if they could have been able also to look out for the emerging technologies like AI, you have mentioned AI, so that the workers may work less and earn more. And by increasing the margins of benefits and profits, then Uber will have some space to be able to accommodate the full-time option model. And then instead of having it as a radical implementation where it's a full shift, you could propose a phased process whereby perhaps those who will be able to be absorbed into the full-time are those who are meeting certain performance outcomes, so that you can set targets. If you're able to get these targets, at least we know that you're sustainable with us, and then it can be gradual. Perhaps maybe we might come up with a model that will make financial sense to Uber, because also as they handle the ethical challenges, we must also make it financially viable. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That was a great point. Thank you, Jeffrey. I don't think we really did too much research into how it will actually affect Uber financially. So thank you for that point.
Megan?
Yeah, thank you. Jeffrey teed me up with a great segue around disruption. So I kudos to the team just for bringing my favorite F word of the day, flexibility, into the solution that you're proposing. I think that's a really smart angle to take on this. What I would love to understand in thinking about, Uber is the icon of disruption, right? So they came into this space disrupting the livery service and the cab service of yesteryear. And some of the changes along this path, represent evolution in terms of how do we think now about this higher part of the pyramid around ethics. How are you thinking about that in light of the model that you're putting forward in terms of Uber being disruptive and having a scenario that's somewhat binary? You can pick a path to stay in this gig economy, or you can pick a more traditional path of employment. And I guess the second part of that question is, for clarity, you've referenced a couple of safety nets, or I think privileges and protections that I think the team here is associating with employment. Most states are at will. You can still exit people with or without cause anytime at the discretion. So how are you thinking about those protections? Maybe articulate that a little bit more for me on this one, so I understand how you're thinking about that proposal. two questions baked into one.
Would Peyton or John like to answer this question, please?
All right. I do think that they're still going to cause an interruption. I think Uber itself will not change. I think right now that the public outlook, as I said on social media, I think has really gone down. So right now with them being independent contractors, Uber cannot really tell a driver what to do and what not to do, and that's why you're seeing more and more common. There is a lot of issues coming up with the drivers or how they may or may not act when giving someone a ride. So I think that is always going to be there, unless you are a full-time employee. So I think that the interruption will never go away, because, I mean, 15 years ago, you used to have to stand on the side of the street, wave down a cab. Now everything that we do is right here on a 5-inch device, and that will never change. And what was the second part of that question? Could you repeat that for me?
Oh, just asking the team for some alignment and articulating the protections that you're associating with Uber drivers opting to go employment versus kind of independent contractor gig. I think there was a reference around there's some protections. And so yeah, I can clarify a little bit. So, why not just offer a supplemental one-time payment in the spirit of offsetting cost of benefits versus actually hiring people? There's at-will employment that still means I can exit anyone at any time if I deem that I want to do so. Not that it's not without a repercussion, but so I'm trying to understand a little bit about what protections are you putting forward as part of that path for full-time employment for individuals opting in if this were offered?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is more of the insurability side of health insurance, all of that, and then opting into a retirement plan as well as a full-time employee does not just provide you sustainability right now, but it provides you sustainability for 25 years down the line. And I think that's where this is where our project started, was how do Uber drivers even make money? And after doing research, we found out people actually do this for a full-time job. None of us knew that. We all thought it was a side gig. And then that's what kicked it off, is because we were looking for long-term sustainability financially. And that's just not right now. That's not 12 months down the road. That is, I mean, everyone's living longer. So I think those are the protections that we were talking about. And a one-time payment, how you said, to cover those insurance expenses. I don't know how to.
I think
If
I
you,
think we also like.
sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Sean, but I think we also like we give like insurance coverage too, like providing uh like drivers like protection in case of like an accident or incidents during work hours too. Um, like layering the protection, providing like the traditional employers. And I believe that I don't like the legal protection to like what Sean was saying. For these drivers, like we would give them like the health insurance, like paid leave to, um, and like we would give them like safety regulations, like driver background checks, insurance, like during rides what I was talking about, and just like safety training. Um, so yeah.
And I think providing those coverages, if you will call them that, instead of just paying them a one-time check. I don't know how you don't know how long the driver's going to be with your company. I can't speak for everyone, but I would rather take a smaller check every 2 weeks than a big lump sum to cover me for the next 10 years. I think we saw that a lot with the COVID reimbursement checks for people that did not work. They were spending money that they didn't have, and then they used that COVID check, and then they didn't have food for the next 6 months because they didn't spend it wisely. So I believe myself, I can't speak for my teammates. I believe that giving someone a one-time lump sum check to cover X amount of time would not be the smartest. And maybe for the business, it might be the best decision, but that would not have the best interest of the person you are paying, I believe.
Let's do Ed and then Jeffrey, and then we will move into feedback. Go ahead.
Thank you, team. Just another question, kind of piggyback off of Megan's question. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of a driver. I understand the two-path model. Can you talk a little bit about, it's really like separate use cases, right? If I want to go with a part-time model, I'm maybe a student, you said trying to make money on the side. But if I want the full-time model, I'm maybe like, this is my only source of income, supporting a family, that type of thing. But if I am that use case for a full-time driver, then can you talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of doing that? I mean, the pros are that you have the income, right, and you can plan on that minimum wage. But then, what are the not so good or the cons of doing that? For instance, would I be giving up making extra income in the event of surge price driving, that type of thing? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think with becoming a full-time driver, you are, I don't want to say guaranteed, but I'm going to say you are guaranteed a minimum wage, right? So you are risking losing out on that surge pricing, but you traded that up for getting paid maybe when you didn't give as many rides. And I think that just goes back to the sustainability aspect of the economy, is if you have more people making a set amount of money each week versus the influx that you have with being a independent contractor with Uber, I think the economy overall will be better off because you have more people getting money on a weekly basis versus I made X amount this Friday, but next Friday I may not make anything. So I guess to answer that, that's a risk you got to be willing to take. Do you want to? You might go out and you might make this much one day, but you're not guaranteed to make that the next day. As a full-time driver, here's your minimum wage. Sure, we can. I believe Jeffrey may have said that you get quick bonuses or some, maybe I'm mistaken, but someone said bonuses, you meet this ride, we'll give you this bonus. I guess that's just a risk the person is willing to, the driver's has to be willing to take.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, you put your hands down. Did you still have a question?
Well, that was an area hand that had lifted. However, I just want to say that this ethical dilemma is quite an interesting one, because you're looking at a global player who, perhaps because of the uniqueness of their capacity to manage employees across different jurisdictions, which have different requirements, because you mentioned Italy, you mentioned Europe, you mentioned the US state legal framework. And when we look at all those different frameworks, to be able to have employees who are very vibrant and they are joining in at will and leaving at will, and still be able to have a capacity to comply with all those different labor laws, it's not so easy. And perhaps maybe as you think forward, you might also want to propose maybe a third option, which necessarily may not be about full-time employment versus independent, but perhaps also introducing what you may call the business process outsourcing. to be able to see if it's possible to transfer the burden of employing to a third party who can be contracted by Uber to provide the drivers with certain terms. And then within the jurisdiction where Uber is operating, that particular firm should be responsible for managing the labor issues about that particular challenge. Perhaps maybe that might be a third option, because at the end of the day, the solution must be valid for the business, that is workable and practicable. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are no longer in our role as advisors, so we can continue feedback. I believe Jeffrey has been able to provide some feedback throughout. So why don't we start with Cynthia? What feedback do you have for the team?
Great. Well, thank you, team. I think this is really a challenging problem for this company because it's really talking about their, they move from founder to enterprise, and what do they do next? And what do they do on a global basis? And I loved how you brought in the global cases that they're facing. So this is not just a US problem. In the UK and other geographies, they're facing similar issues. So one thing about framing is, I think the two-path solution could be framed as, again, an innovation for them to continue their leadership and be at a completely different place. And it might not be about what we have as classic benefits, but it might be about newer types of benefits. So with a soft workforce and an affiliated group that's so large that might move to be a workforce, would they go to things like, discounted car purchase arrangements with manufacturers? Could they build credit through credit gas fuel cards that had a credit aspect that helped them with their financial health for their company? So again, what's next beyond just healthcare and stability? It could be access to mental health benefits. I will never forget reading about the Uber drivers parking in the San Francisco Candlestick Park parking lot by the thousands, where they slept because they had come in from Sacramento to drive in San Francisco for Monday through Friday. So that's not sustainable, right? You can't always be parking in a stadium parking lot and take care of your family and your community and yourself. So again, I think you're really on the right path with a bold solution for them that may be country by country to start with to solve some of their legal issues, but will position them for the future and their workforce, because your point that their product is their workforce is a really good point from my perspective. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Megan.
Yeah, great job, everyone. This is certainly one of those file it under the devil is in the details. This is deceptively complicated, and you will find it's like an onion, right? As you get into it, one problem that you're solving actually creates another one. So really, commend you all for taking a really thoughtful approach. I did share, I think flexibility is a really pragmatic and I think a real path to making improvements. Just a couple points of feedback. I think you hovered around it, and I think you have an opportunity to really, really hone in on something Cynthia was saying. This could be your point of differentiation. This is a really competitive space. And so when you're thinking about pitching to a board, most boards aren't going to say, okay, we'll take a massive hit on revenue because we're the biggest dog out there and it's the right thing to do. Yes, that's all true, but appealing to another area of sentiment, I think you guys were touching on that with, the long-term sustainability of the business, our branding, our reputation. I think there's a next level thinking on how do you become the leader on innovation and care for employees, and move yourself ahead of the pack on that front. So I think you're getting there. I think you can make that message even stronger. I certainly think there were a couple of good context points you brought in with what's happening in the macro landscape around employment law. Another opportunity you could do to strengthen your proposal around improvements would be, what are other gig players doing? So what's Lyft doing, or what's TaskRabbit? There's a ton of different gig setups outside. I think you were talking a little bit about DoorDash and some other impact that Domino could have in the market. Might be good just to set the context to see Are there successes or failures that could be, drawn in to build your case that other people are doing? Quick note for me, and again, I don't know if this was part of the instruction. I think the midpoint killed some of your momentum. Typically, you're not going to have a board meeting. If the board is engaged with what you're saying, they're not going to let you talk for 25 minutes without interjecting and asking questions. So holding the floor for 25 minutes is great. But I would say, in a real situation, you don't necessarily want to have that. Maybe it's a break glass in case of emergency, but keep the momentum going, because I felt like I was hanging on. I was like, okay, I'm engaged. And there was a little bit of a breath that I felt probably wasn't needed. So more just semantics on that for me. Great job, and really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the holistic approach that you were putting forward for ways that this can get better for our workforce, our planet, and our economy. So good job.
Thank you. That was a good point about the midpoint too. I kind of felt that. So it was nice to hear that someone else thought it was kind of pointless, but.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Well, I must say that this is quite a nice paper, given the fact that this is one of the global players that indeed the question of them having legal suits and all those kind of ethical issues is very varied and has been happening across the globe. So going forward, I think the comments that have been given by the panelists are very, very important. So if you be able to take those judges' comments and improve on them, you are likely to solve a problem that is a nagging issue to this particular company. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ed?
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat what everybody else said. Pretty much great presentation, very thorough. The differentiation aspect, I think, is key. Probably could have spent a little bit more time on that. For instance, Uber could partner with corporate accounts, right? Say, hey, we are helping you meet your ESG goals. So I know all the big companies have corporate accounts with Uber. So by continuing to select Uber or by having this as a differentiation, perhaps they could grab more corporate accounts and then kind of offset that cost that way. But overall, great job.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Can I make one more note about the midpoint?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go from what Megan said, which was really interesting, because when you even proposed the midpoint in your agenda, I thought, a midpoint, what is that? That's not something I use routinely in my presentation. So it intrigued me. And I think Megan has an excellent point that it hit the momentum a little odd. However, I think that if you use the midpoint and you gave a factoid, a new idea, versus a recap and a look forward, if you use the midpoint to do something different for a split second to recapture attention, you can take that momentum and take it to a higher level.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Noted.
Thanks.
Yeah. I don't want to say it, but our professor, I think, is in here. It is his idea for the midpoint. I don't want to call anyone out, but thank you, though. I appreciate the feedback. I will take that with me.
Yes, and if you do it right, it can create like a good bounce to the next segue. Yeah. Overall, great job, team. You picked a very complicated and challenging situation to go into. It has a lot of dimensions and a lot of complexity. One recommendation is when you're proposing a huge spend and a huge initiative to the board and shareholders, you really want to hone in a little bit more on, is this an industry issue? Is it an industry ethical issue? Or is it an Uber issue, right? And if it is an industry issue, why does Uber have the responsibility to address this industry ethical issue? Because you are making a choice as your strategic advantage to address this, right? Part of it is a choice. So you want to really hone in on that and making sure that you set a platform for your board and your shareholders to really understand this is why Uber needs to make a very strategic decision to address this issue. And also, because it's such a complicated global issue, your solution it appears to be more of a catch-all. So you kind of want to start looking at local challenges. What have they worked on? What have they tried? And see if your solution fits into the new model. So maybe 1099 independent contractor is an issue in California, but maybe it's not such a big issue in another country. So we don't want to take an approach that applies on a global basis without really understanding what the local teams have done in the past and what has not worked. But other than that, fantastic job, great job. You've done a really good job in trying to pull together a lot of information and dimension and research. So we appreciate all of your time and thought into this.
Yes,
All right.
thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, team.